U.S. President Joe Biden addressed Congress and the American people in his second State of the Union address. With a tone of optimism, he tried to tout a growing economy and a hot labor market. Take a listen.
The story of America is a story of progress and resilience, of always moving forward, of never, ever giving up. It's a story unique among all nations. We're the only country that has emerged from every crisis we've ever entered stronger than we got into it. 2 years ago, COVID had shut down, our businesses were closed, our schools were robbed of so much, and today, COVID no longer controls our lives. And 2 years ago, democracy faced its greatest threat to the Civil War, and today, though bruised, our democracy remains unbowed and unbroken.
In his speech, Biden also aimed to call for unity. He spent the first part of his address reflecting on the new political reality in Washington. Moving ahead, he celebrated a series of bipartisan wins, from the sweeping infrastructure bill to the Chip and Science Act and the first gun safety legislation in decades. He also hailed what he called record low unemployment in the U.S. in 50 years.
2 years ago, the economy was reeling. I stand here tonight after we've created, with the help of many people in this room, 12 million new jobs. More jobs created in 2 years than any president's created in 4 years, because of you all, because of the American people.
Biden pointed to cooperation on infrastructure spending, high-tech investment in microchip manufacturing, and military aid to Ukraine. Biden also made a strong statement in support of abortion rights. He vowed to veto any national abortion ban that hits his desk.
Well, already more than a dozen states are enforcing extreme abortion bans. Make no mistake about it. If Congress passes a national ban, I will veto it. I think a lot of you at home.
Biden and House Republicans are engaging in a high-stake tussle over raising the debt ceiling.
The idea is that we're not going to be moved into being threatened to default on the debt if we don't respond. Folks,
Biden unveiled a number of new and rehashed proposals during his presidential address. The president rallied for rights of workers to form unions and a decent living wage, and also talked against junk fees some companies continue to charge. He spoke about the need for police reform and a new gun control legislation, pointing to presidential guests in the gallery. The parents of Tyree Nichols and a hero from the Monterey Park mass shooting attended the State of the Union address in person as guests.
United States.
The Chinese surveillance balloon was a huge story in America over the weekend, but it received a mention from the president only at the end of his speech.
Fuzzy out here, and it's a kind of a cruddy phone, but it's slightly overcast. Well, what the heck is that?
And that was it for the balloon talk. He also did not generally spend a lot of time talking about China. The war in Ukraine dominated Biden's State of the Union address last year, but also received barely a mention this time. The president welcomed Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S. seated in the gallery and heralded allies' support for the nation. Arkansas Governor Sarah Huckabee Sanders gave the Republican response to the State of the Union address. She said she didn't believe, quote, much of anything she heard from the president, and suggested that he was unfit for the office he holds. Well, for more on this, we are joined by Dr. Christina Iona Dragmir, a New York-based political analyst and adjunct assistant professor at Columbia University Institute for the Study of Human Rights and a consultant with the United Nations. She's joining us live from New York. Christina, thank you so much for joining us on WION. So one thing is for sure, what was clear in President Biden's speech was that the era of big government is back. just to play on words of how Bill Clinton once said the era of big government is over. There were so many indications that he wants more government involvement and spending during his second year.
Hi. I'm really happy to be with you today. Thank you so much for having me. Just as a quick thing, I am not with Columbia University. I'm faculty at New York University. The speech yesterday was definitely something that reminded us of all the other speeches that historically presidents have made, using the State of Union as the bully pulpit, meaning that they use this to pursue their agenda, to also highlight their success. And I very much appreciated the way you put it earlier, because I think that one of the things that we have seen is a focus on the American politics, a focus on the American economy, and a focus on the policies that the United States is looking to engage in the next years, and very little on the external affairs and foreign affairs of the United States. And there was mentioning of the rethinking of the relationship with China and also of the war in Ukraine, but this was nothing compared to what other presidents have used in the past with respect to their foreign policy. We can see from Governor Huckabee's response that indeed Republicans are looking at this as the return of the big government against the freedom of the United States. But I want to caution your audience in thinking about this, because we also see that the Democrat response to this is actually one that emphasizing traditional American values. And we can see how President Biden has also emphasized the idea of capitalism and competition. What I would say is that what we have seen is a return to the old American values, to America hoping to be seen as the beacon of hope, as one of the leaders of the world, by pushing America first. So I think that while we see that the Republicans and Democrats have things that differ on, they also have something that is in common, and that is this agenda of America first.
And this was somewhat a launchpad for his re-election campaign. It was clear that he was trying to set the stage as he gets ready to hit the road across the United States and tout about his accomplishments. And regarding the economy, you could cherry pick and say that there are aspects of the economy that are doing better than others. But what's concerning is his approval ratings are at an all-time low. He was convincing an American public that's weary of the war in Ukraine, that is having problems financially in many ways, and really members of his own party don't want him to run again. According to a new AP poll, only 37% of Democrats want to see a second term of Biden. So what do you make of all of this? Was he convincing enough?
The situation is actually puzzling political scientists as well as economists. The economy of the United States on many markers is doing so much better than it was at least a year ago with respect to inflation, with jobs, and so on. However, at the level of the population, it's hardly perceived. So some have called this secondhand pessimism, meaning that even though the optimism comes from Washington, optimism comes from the economists at the level of the population, this optimism is still yet to be felt. People are still struggling with inflation, with economic insecurities, and they are very much concerned about what is happening. So this is actually quite puzzling for the people of like myself, who are looking at this and are wondering how come these two are actually not aligned, the state of the economy with the feeling of the people. Having an approval rating of 37% about the way the economy is going is very low for a president that is willing to go for a second term. We don't know yet, he didn't announce it yet, but what we have seen yesterday is a very energetic President Biden, one that is willing to engage and talk across the aisle, one one that is interested in producing more and more policy and ready to hit the road. I think that this State of Union address was meant to energize the Democratic base, and in a way it did. It showed a Democratic Biden that was someone that people could relate to, but also a Democratic Biden that was ready for the second term. So we will see how the next events are gonna take place, and if this is indeed just the beginning of him announcing the tour for the re-election.
Well, thank you so much for that, Dr. Christina Iona Dragomir, and thank you for joining us on WION.